It is indeed the off-season, which means that we don't really have too many topics popping up every day. As a result, I wanted to start to dive into a little bit more of the experimental sort of YouTube video style. I know the X year later, looking at this trade down the line isn't really a new thing or a concept for this channel, but it is kind of new when you talk about teams that really aren't one of the Red Wings, the Canadiens, or the Canucks. Today, what I wanted to do was take a look at a trade made between the New York Rangers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was a pretty big move back when it was made, and I think you could definitely say it's a pretty big move right now, considering the amount of talent that one of these teams was able to accrue. Meanwhile, with that same view of hindsight, it's very apparent just how lopsided this entire trade really was. So, we're taking a trip back to 2018, February 26, and we're talking about the Ryan McDonagh trade. To set up the context over here, the New York Rangers were kind of in somewhat of a rebuild. We had seen the letter published by the Rangers and their management talking about how this team is willing to take a step back and how they want to reload for the future in terms of building their on-ice talent. This trade happened 20 days after the letter was published, and it included then captain of the Rangers, Ryan McDonagh. You know how everybody memes that the Rangers always trade away their captains who are named Ryan over to Tampa Bay because it happened with Ryan Callahan, it happened with Ryan McDonagh, but this McDonagh trade was indeed the one. Back in this time frame, Ryan McDonagh was coming off a season where he put up 42 points in 77 games played, and he had 26 points in 49 games in that stint before getting sent over to Tampa. He was an absolute rock, a solid defenseman all around, and he was pretty much the best defenseman on the team. The problem was, Ryan McDonagh was, at the time, 29 years old, he was in his prime, and he was probably going to go out there and demand a significant amount of money on the next contract he would have to sign after 2019. This made for a pretty interesting challenge when you acknowledge where the Rangers were in their rebuild, and as a result, Ryan McDonagh trade rumors were popping up and going around everywhere for a few days. But it wasn't just Ryan McDonagh himself who was sent over to Tampa. No. J.T. Miller, then New York Rangers 25-year-old player and former top-round pick of the Rangers, was sent over to Tampa as well. In the prior year before getting traded, J.T. Miller had 56 points in 82 games played, 22 goals, 34 assists, and in the season while he got traded, he had 40 points in 63 games there. He was a budding star, and he was coming off a Team North America stint where he actually made the World Cup of Hockey squad for U23 guys. Needless to say, JT Miller was seen as a pretty good player that was kind of on the up and up as he was developing and progressing throughout the NHL. Now I know what you're thinking, wait a minute, the Rangers were trying to get younger, but they traded away Miller, what in the world is going on here? And that sort of sentiment is kind of addressed when you take a look at the return in this trade. JT Miller and Ryan McDonagh were sent over to Tampa Bay in exchange for a package that included 5 things. First was Vladislav Namestnikov. He was then 25 years old, he's 29 now, so he's the same age as Miller. In the season when he got traded though, Namestnikov was doing pretty well with the Lightning. He had 44 points in 62 games played. The problem was he was playing with Stamkos and Kucherov, so he was definitely being given an easier time than prior years. You could see the previous body of work that Namestnikov had. He had 28 points in 74 games, 35 points in 80 games. Miller was just overall a better point producer, but Namestnikov still had some value, especially after his progression with Stamkos and Kucherov, so he was included in this trade. The Rangers also acquired themselves Brett Howden, who was only 20 years old at the time, but was still a former first-round pick from 2016. He didn't do anything with the Lightning because he was in the WHL the entire time, but he had made the Rangers a few years after that, and he really wasn't all too extraordinary. I mean, he maxed out at 23 points in 66 games played, which is not bad, but he actually did start to regress as his career went on. The last season in New York he had 7 points in 42 games, and now he is a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. You also had yourselves Libor Hajek, who was included in this trade too, and I know a lot of Rangers fans like to go out there and meme on this guy because he is good, he isn't good, he's whatever. He's got one more season left at $800,000, and he went out there last season producing 1 point in 17 games played. There also was an entire controversy as to the deployment of defensemen on the team, and whether or not Hajek was deserving of the ice time that he would be able to get. And then you had yourselves the draft picks here too. There was a first-round pick from Tampa Bay in 2018 that ended up becoming Nils Lundqvist, who is a prospect that I like, and then there was a conditional second-round pick that the Lightning sent over as well. That was on the condition of the Tampa Bay Lightning winning the Stanley Cup in 2018 or 2019. If it did happen, then it would have become a first. It didn't, so it stayed as a second. The Rangers took Carl Henriksson, who is a prospect currently in the Frölunda Hockey Club in the SHL, not really producing all too well, even though he is a center left wing. He also is pretty small. So this is a very interesting prospect and development profile that we're going to see over the next few years. But at the end of the day, when you take a look at everything that happened here, JT Miller and Ryan McDonagh, for a younger package of Namestnikov, Howden, Hajek, Lundqvist, and Henriksson, this trade went out there on paper and pretty much did what the Rangers said they wanted to do in the letter. They're retooling, they're rebuilding, they're reloading, they're acquiring younger assets for guys that are a little bit older. Namestnikov and Miller kind of even themselves out when you take a look at the age, but Namestnikov, being a more inferior asset than Miller, kind of starts to bring itself to the forefront, especially when you take a look at what things are like right now. With the Rangers, Namestnikov maxed out getting 31 points in 78 games played. He ended up becoming a Detroit Red Wing and eventual Dallas Stars. He is back with the Lightning now, though, because he signed a contract with them again. And then you take a look at what JT Miller did. Hey, he was a point per game with the Lightning when he made that team initially after getting sent over there. He was a third liner in 2018-19 at 47 points in 75 games played. And then he became what he is today for the Vancouver Canucks, a 99-point caliber player. So, yeah, New York, you probably missed out on that, but, I mean, there were a lot of rumors saying that Miller might actually end up back in New York alongside of K'Andre Miller, so you could have JT Miller and K'Andre Miller. It's kind of funny to have that little connection there. Meanwhile, for Ryan McDonagh, you take a look at what he eventually accomplished with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Sure, his point production was not really super incredible the entire way through. He maxed out at 46 points in the first full season he had there in Tampa Bay, which is great. But taking a lesser role with the team as the years went on, it was kind of inevitable because you have a lot of talent on that Tampa blue line. But at the end of the day, McDonagh won 2 Stanley Cups, so I don't really think he cares. He is now a Nashville Predator after getting sent over there as a cap dump sort of situation because the Lightning would not have been able to pay McDonagh the latter half of that 6.7 AAV contract. They also had other players they needed to re-sign, but at the end of the day, as we said, they have 2 Stanley Cups and a third finals appearance in a row, so they don't really care if Ryan McDonagh is gone. For reference, I wanted to go over and take a look at some tweets from Rangers fans talking about this particular trade. This is from Broadway Block on Twitter. If you could undo any one trade since the letter, what would it be? I'll start. The McDonagh, JT Miller trade for Namestnikov, Hajek, Howden, and the picks, which became Lundqvist and Henriksson. This trade arguably never had to be made in general. McDonagh signed for 6.7, a bargain considering Trouba's contract. JT just showed us he's worth his draft slot, putting up 99 points this year. That's just what we gave up. On the 5 additions, Hajek has been in the press box. Howden was shipped for change. Vlad has had a few different jerseys on too. I'll be honest, I know very little about Henriksson, that's always a good sign, and Niels is left without a slot. Tell me your most hated moves. You then had yourselves this tweet from John Fortunato from April of 2021, so a year ago. It's inexcusable at this point that Ronanen plays in Hartford while Hajek is, well, Hajek. You tried, New York Rangers. The McDonagh-Miller trade is a literal nightmare. Forcing Hajek and Howden into our lives isn't going to change that. This is what the Garden Faithful said a year ago, too. If you ever feel down thinking about how the Rangers traded McDonagh and Miller away for nothing as of today, I love you, Nils Lundqvist, remember that McDonagh played for the Lightning, and they saved us back-to-back Islanders Cup wins. Obviously, they're referring to the third-round matchup in the 2020 and the 2021 playoffs where the Lightning played off against the Islanders in both of those series, and McDonagh was part of the winning Tampa Bay squad. And I guess that's a little bit more of a positive spin to put on the entire thing, but it still doesn't change the disparity in value and how the Rangers ended up getting stuff that really wasn't all too worth what Miller eventually became and what McDonagh eventually became. I mean, Miller was traded over to Vancouver in that trade with the first-round pick and everything, and that was seen by a lot of Canucks fans as a potential bad move at the time. Like, I mean, now it's like, no, you got a 99-point player, so that's great, but like, at the end of the day, this trade, McDonagh and Miller for all this crap, it really just does not fly. Now, I know the Rangers right now, they probably don't care too much about it because everybody's a little bit older and you have yourselves a pretty good team that just made the third round yourselves too, so congratulations. But I thought 4 years down the line after the letter, it was pretty interesting to go out there and see where these trade pieces lie. Talk in the comments on your thoughts about the Miller-McDonagh trade. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 99, and bye.